I actually save all my bottles all the time. Why do you guys ask?
Well, you look like you could have a small fortune there if you actually brought them in to be recycled. Oh, Jesus. You didn't know?
You didn't know? Oh, man.
What are you talking about?
Ah.
Pantheon. I'm Rake, and these are my hosts, Eddie G and Lynx. How you guys doing today?
What's going on, everybody?
It's hot.
It's real hot today.
So hot.
Almost as hot as these hot takes on Pantheon. And we got a show for you today. We're here to talk about why Pantheon is the child of Warcraft and Everquest. We got a bit of a rundown here for everybody. And I know a lot of our players talk about both games as lineage and pioneers and progenitors of this system. And I know all three of us have extensive experience in playing both games. And it really is a common after the two of them, because these two gigantic pioneers of the industry of MMOs have been running 26 years and 22 years respectively. And I know there's a lot of comparisons and contrasts. And Eddie, I know you've probably played a lot earlier than some of the us, or you were really in the end game of Everquest in its early days. So kind of from your perspective, what's kind of the transition, the change here between Pantheon versus Everquest's early days, as best you could tell?
Well, the early days, it was there was nothing like it, and so you had to figure out your way and learn. You didn't have the Discord that we have now, and it was very hard to maneuver. And my character, which was a dwarf, was born or hatched in Greater Fador, or how you ever pronounce it, and everybody was on the main continent. So I was kind of like in my own little cocoon trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
So with Pantheon, the difference with Pantheon was I kind of knew a little bit about what was going to go on. And, I was a human, and I was, in Thronefest, in Avalia, born in Avalia, where there were plenty of other players there to help me kind of, adjust to what it was. But the similarities are there. And I've said this on previous shows. The addiction to both of these are really hard. I mean, they grab me hard. I love the graphics. There is another game out there that has been tested, and they've had weekends where you could play it, that is very true to the Everquest graphics. I cannot go back. I like the Pantheon graphics.
That new gen systems.
Right, exactly. And also the combat system is a lot more intricate, and I really dig that. So I think that is the evolution that I've seen. And hey, listen, I'm a 60-year-old dude, and I don't always, it captured me once again, Pantheon. It just did that. And I never played WoW. I've played a little Lord of the Rings online, and this game, it's what I really wanted. And I like the fact, I wish there was a little more questing. I will be honest with you.
And there will be.
There will be. So that's my point of view as far as the comparisons go.
Yeah. And Lynx, I know you also have a lot of experience in EQ. And one thing that I've kind of really noticed about the two is that Everquest has a fundamental system kind of baked right into the fabric of the game that really enforces the social environment. You really can't do much in Everquest by yourself, whereas Warcraft took a much softer approach, and it allows people to kind of solo. It allows you to experience a lot of things by yourself without the need and help of other people. But you don't get quite the same rewarding experience where you can't do the end game raids and you can't see all the content. And now, would you say that that's really a fair assessment between the two, or would you kind of put one more towards the other?
I didn't play a lot of WoW. I did a little bit of private servers, just to get a feel for it. I experienced TBC and a little bit of Wrath. but my experience at that time, it didn't feel like EQ. The biggest thing from my experience in EQ that I always take with me is your reputation as a person, as a player, whether it's just your personality people remember, your play style that people remember, the combination of two. It carries weight in the game. And WoW, you're just join a random queue and you're in a group, you crawl through the dungeon, you forget about people unless you add them to friends, and then you just move on to the next group. In EQ,
Right, so there's a
it
sense
was
of
never like that.
permanence in your
And I
social
get that
standing.
vibe from Pantheon. It's so nice to be around people that appreciate you. You get to know them. It's a smaller base community right now. It's trying to rebuild and grow and fortify itself. We're on a great server that's doing that very well. We're in a great guild. We have great friends that we've made. That's why we even have this podcast. And that's what's pulling me back every day. I can live without a little bit of content. I can get used to the patches and stuff like that and changes to classes. I only play one class. But I keep coming back because, to be honest, it's the community. I enjoy the community, and it makes me think of EQ. So,
As a guy who never played WoW, you talked about a queue. Is it certain instances, or is it open world like this game?
well, it wasn't in the classic era, but when I did play, it was on a private server, so I don't know if it was a custom thing, but they have like a looking for group and looking for dungeon, and eventually there was like looking for raid, and you just queue up, and it'll auto-select. You choose your role, healer, tank, DPS, and the groups will form you. Like, it'll form for you, and then based off of what dungeon you selected, it'll summon you to the dungeon. Like, as far as I know, like true classic WoW, it was more like EQ in a sense where you actually had to go meet people in the game
Yeah.
and publicly post, hey, I'm looking for group, or you can put the LFG tag on and then you can search for people, send them a message, say, hey, you want to join for this group. They had summoning stones, which was different from EQ. They would be like stones, large like rock formations that you could interact with and summon individuals to the dungeon entrance, but it took a minimum of 2 people. I thought that was a cool feature that I don't think EQ ever took.
Okay. Yeah, EQ, you did get to know and meet people, and I may not have told you, but I've actually joined with a Chinese people as well, who were from Hong Kong, or they were playing from China, which I got to interact with them and got to meet people from all over the world, which is really cool. So the social aspect definitely is a grabber here. And from what you can tell me, in WoW, you may group with people for a certain dungeon, but you may never see them again.
Yeah, they're single serving friends over there for the most part.
Right. And now you get to go in town, you see the same people in town, and you see what they're doing. You maybe sneak and look at what level they are. Are they leveling? Are they just staying the same? It's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the game really, Pantheon, is really 70% EQ and 30% Warcraft, because there's a lot of systems that have borrowed from the two games that really married them well together. And that, take the crafting system, for instance. EQ had a really abominable crafting system, especially in the early days, where you had to guess what the materials were. You'd click combine and you could lose everything that you put into the combine list if it failed on the skill up. But in contrast, Warcraft was very simple. It was just, here's the items you need, you click create, you can keep clicking that until it runs out. But it also offered something that Pantheon took and lifted appropriately, and that's the gatherable nodes. And I played a lot of things in Warcraft where I would just go out for hours and pick flowers or gather anything I could, skins. But in Pantheon, there are like 4 or 5 different things that you could gather, and you could pick up all of the gathering professions, which allows a single player of any type to go out and just really, you could just hang out and chop trees for 4 hours if you want to. And you could turn them into all kinds of different useful materials that can be sold to other players. You could turn them into boxes for the bank. There's alchemy components, there's skins, there's everything. And there's even a whole small subsetted trade skill system that allows you to gather more effectively.
I'm not a big fan of crafting myself, so when I have the option to just feed my guildmates or collect resources to sell them and make a bit of coin on the side, that's what I would do, because the crafting aspect I was never really drawn into it. Even in WoW, it was a little easier. And in Classic EQ, there wasn't a lot that I appreciated, but I didn't mind finding the materials that kept me busy. It let me explore the world. Sometimes I get to kill monsters to collect certain resources. So it was interactive, and I could help people, and they could help me back, and I was involved.
Yeah, and you know what? Pantheon, I feel like, lifted a lot of that social atmosphere with that, where it combined the ability to help your guildmates and help your people while just hanging out, but also give the player a rewarding experience. And I think they did a pretty good job on it, combining those two. I think that Pantheon, it's in its infancy, but the crafting system is pretty solid here. There's some discrepancies here and there where, like for instance, I wish that we could find out what the stats of an item are before we click craft. But that's going to definitely happen in a future update, as we've been told by some of our illustrious developers via the Pantheon Discord. And Eddie, I've heard you mention this before, and kind of just talking with you, because EverQuest's demand for population to really achieve a healthy server required everybody to have people to play with and to meet and to hang out with, whereas Warcraft had a more of a solo-friendly system. But this resulted a lot of the times in EverQuest with boxing. So, Eddie, why don't you tell us what boxing is for those that might not know?
Okay, well, boxing is playing multiple characters at the same time on separate accounts. Now, you guys probably would know more about what apps or what programs you need to run to do this. But what happened is that you would have a guy playing a cleric and a warrior or something, and also some classes would just have a healer as kind of a bolster to power level a new class or a new tune you were trying to do. And boxing didn't come in wasn't a thing right away. It was something that came in a couple years, probably 3 years later. And I wasn't really aware of it because I was just doing my own thing, and I'd be like, oh, this guy has a similar name. Maybe they're brothers. Maybe their cousins are playing. Yeah. But no, it turns out that they're boxers. And so multi-boxing, something that I personally don't agree with. It ruins the community, which
it degrades the entire social structure of the game, especially when you have a game that's really, really dependent upon that structure, like EverQuest.
Right, and all three of us are social animals. Even though we're playing an MMO, in our man caves, so to speak, we are social animals. We totally enjoy meeting people and interacting with people.
That includes you.
Yes, and boxers do not interact.
Yeah,
they basically, and then it's two people in your group now you got to play with. I don't want to play with a guy who's not going to be able to talk or interact because he's so busy playing his box.
Yeah, and I think we all have that problem with it, and it always leads to the same conclusion, in that the person who's boxing is going to have two characters that are going to be playing at about 20% effectiveness. And Lynx, I know you probably come into this contact with this. Would you agree that boxers are typically not quite up to snuff of a regular player that's playing one character at a time?
Man, I'm just not a fan. I understand why people do it. I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah.
I see why some people do it, because maybe the servers are quiet or they don't have a lot of time and they just want to do their own thing when they want to do it. They can just log in their multiple accounts and keep themselves busy. Some people have things like social anxiety. So people just don't work well with others or play well with others, or just have no interest in exploring other people's interests. They want to camp where they want to go. They just get on, do their own thing. I just don't like it. I like to be with my group. I like everyone to be involved. I like to know everyone's doing their own thing. They're taking care of their own roles. I'm not discrediting people that are talented. There's talented boxers out there.
Oh,
you don't even know.
Absolutely.
They're so good at what they do, and they have like 3 characters running at the same time, doing all the right things, but it's never quite the same thing. There's always an inherent risk, and I'm not a big fan.
And we put our money where our mouth is. Yeah. I mean, Dizok Imperials on the Veil of Azaria server, we have a rule. You can box all you want when you're playing, on solo, by yourself. But if you're in a group, you can't box. That's the number one rule. So we back up what we think and what we feel. And I think that's fair, because there are some times if you play early in the morning or late at night, there's nobody on. So you have to box. You want a group, you want to advance your character, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But within groups, we want to have that social interaction between each other.
Agreed.
And it's even tough. Some people don't even want to get on Discord. You run into that.
We try to encourage people to, It really
we
helps
do.
foster the relationships.
But we're not gonna, cut you out because you don't want to, have your voice on Discord.
But it
People have
really
different
helps.
comfort levels. People have different comfort levels out, and I certainly don't want to intrude, but if we're doing a high level dungeon where that communication is really needed, you got to be on Discord. That's it. Just listen. You don't even have to talk.
Yeah. No, you're completely right. And, that kind of brings me to my last point about the similarities between the two games, and that Everquest, in comparison to Warcraft, was a much more difficult game. And Pantheon preserves that tradition of difficulty. Death, for instance, is very punishing. You lose a heavy amount of experience. You have to run back and retrieve your items. Oftentimes, you'll have to require the services of a friendly necromancer or summoner so that you can actually retrieve your body. And that penalty, that punishing environment attracts a different kind of a player in a lot of the ways, because it reminds me sometimes of Dark Souls. And I don't know if I've never actually asked you guys if you're fans of the Dark Souls.
I did not play Dark Souls, no.
Okay. Well, I know our illustrious producer Balinor is a big fan, and I think that he might agree with me that this has got more of a Dark Souls-esque to it than that, because it's it's the level of punishing environment that EQ really offered us, and it really was that push and strive to foster relationships and make friends and do that, whereas the game doesn't function without relationships, and Pantheon is a very social animal. And Lynx, Eddie, would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. And I'll admit right here on YouTube that this is 25 years later, removed from when I started Everquest, that when I die in the experience loss, it's not as brutal as it was in Everquest. You still have your gear, your basic gear on. You lose everything that you had in your bags, but I still have I still have, PTSD.
You're traumatized.
By Everquest. That when I die, I feel like I'm going to lose 1 million experience points, and I have to start like I'm a day behind now.
Yeah.
So the residual effects from EQ are still there in Pantheon, and I enjoy that, because you have to have an element of risk when you're playing.
Yeah.
EQ had it with the Sand Giants. We were doing Oasis.
Oh,
you had to watch out. I just had an experience in Eastern Plains where I just started hunting for the first time with my ranger.
Yeah.
And I saw that griffin, and Conrad, I ran like a chicken.
But it was exciting, right?
Yeah.
The adrenaline was pumping. You were on edge. You're like, oh my God, I don't want to die because the penalties are horrible.
My body out here.
I don't know if there's any summers in the zone. I don't know if someone can res me after. I don't know.
Exactly.
I don't even know where I'm dying. I didn't have a chance to slash lock. I don't know where
Right. Exactly.
I'm new to the zone.
Right.
All those things went through my mind, Rake. And like all those things went through my mind. So
absolutely.
You got to have that element of danger.
You do. And Lynx, I think that you were a pretty end game raider like I was in the more modern progression servers. Is that right?
You know what? I didn't do a ton of it because it was so like I have a hard time sitting still, and a lot of the times raids.
Really?
Typically, I played a bard.
You could have fooled me.
I've never experienced that.
If I played my bard in classic EQ, I would do raiding because I was active. I was running around. I would maybe pulling a whole group of mobs and just kiting them all. The raid would pull out individual targets that they wanted to take down. I was doing like the whole twisting thing manually. No melody here, no slash melody, nothing like that. It kept me active. I need to be active. I need to be involved. I need to have a role. I can't do anything else. But yeah, I did a little bit. I did like the classic stuff. I did hate. I did fear. I did a little bit of sky. But I spent a lot of time just hanging out with the public. Even when I was max level and very well geared, I would just spend time with the community.
Yeah, and I really agree with that. But the one contrast that I think that between at least EverQuest and WoW is that EverQuest had a much larger raiding environment. You needed 50, 70 plus people a lot of times to just kind of zerg these zones in the early days of raiding, whereas Warcraft was a little bit more developed. That raids eventually started to get smaller, and they started out with a high cap of 40, whereas EverQuest had a high cap of 200 people would run into Plane of Fear in the early days.
A lot of times you had to combine guilds.
Yeah,
you had to. Several guilds would be involved in a raid. And you'd have to work out the loot. Who's going to get this and who's going to get that?
Yeah, it was a whole system.
It was a whole system, and you were right. There was I think I actually played on Project 99 for a bit, and I got to Plane of Sky, and it was craziness. It was like you play it. I like the high end. Now there are no raids in Pantheon right now.
Not yet. There's raid-like environment in the Ash Breathers. It's that hard.
Yes, it's very hard, and you really need two groups. But we're right now we're looking for some warriors. We're looking for some clerics. So hit up Dizak Imperials on the Vale of Azarius. Anybody, come on down.
Come on down. If you're going to be active, if you want to interact, if you don't mind being social, or you don't mind using Discord, or even if not, just come and hang out.
You just want to have fun.
Yeah.
Come be with us. Come experience what we're experiencing right now. Be a part of this.
It's productive fun. That's what it is.
And to kind of conclude here on our compare and contrast, I would say Pantheon is more EQ than it is WoW. But there's a lot of WoW players in the game to hang out with and rehash old memories. And if you enjoyed either EQ or WoW, you'll almost definitely enjoy Pantheon. There's a challenge, there's demanding content, and it forces people to work together in a fun way, just like we're all working together right here. And Pantheon's community is much, much more welcoming and far less toxic than either of its predecessors. And
yes, I think that was one of the things that kept me from playing WoW. Was I was hearing that there was a lot of younger people.
Yeah,
it was kind of a toxic environment. Here in Pantheon, we have veterans. These people are veterans of both games.
Yep.
We have a lot of people that in my age range are playing, younger people like you guys. So it's a less toxic, friendly environment. We've been through the war, so to speak. And at this point, we've weeded out pretty much all the idiots. I mean, it's the die-hard MMO gamer is here.
Yeah. And it's true that, Vales of Azarius, our server, it's a small community, so it's much harder to be toxic because everybody knows each other.
That's like me mentioning earlier how EQ, you had that, your attitude of the game, even your play style, even just your personality carries weight. It's like a faction. Your reputation carries weight, and it works like that even in Pantheon. So
and it's right from the start of the game too, which kind of brings me to my next point in starting Pantheon. And I know, Lynx, you haven't made too many characters in general, but if you were to make a new character and you were level 1 hypothetically, and you started in the Barrow Dark, what would you do? How does a new person who's starting in the Barrow Dark start Pantheon?
Well, what races start in the Barrow Dark?
Let's say, I think all of them except elves and halflings right now. Is that true?
It sounds right. I
Okay.
think so. I've only played 2 races.
I think it's only the evil races.
Right now,
the Darkmere and the ogres. Yes.
Yeah. As of this recording, that is the case. I believe ogres are going to have their own special starting area someday, though.
What I would do is instantly /LFG.
Yeah.
I'm a group person. I want to explore and experience things with groups. I don't want to be solo, even if it means being quicker or outpacing somebody else who's competing with me on my side, or I'm not racing. I just want to be with people. I want to enjoy things, especially from the very, very start. If I'm playing a new class, playing a new race, starting in a new starting zone, I want to enjoy it with somebody. I want to build memories from the get-go.
What would you do, Lynx, if you were to start out as a brand new human who's in either Avalia or what?
I would definitely be in Avalia. I guess it would be based off the class I pick. So I favor support classes. I might start a tank because I have a strong feeling that I would get more groups.
Right.
tanks are essential. They're one of the three, founding classes that you want, the Holy Trinity.
Yep.
I wouldn't play healer. Not a big fan of healing. It's
What would you
still
do?
too much. I would get out there. Man, I would probably go in, circle the town. I wouldn't even do quests, to be honest. Not at the start.
I think if you're
I wouldn't even get the crafting.
Yeah, if you're trying, this is my opinion, obviously. If you're starting off, the first thing I would do, bags. Bags are very important because your inventory will fill up in a millisecond if you start collecting. Now, you'll be unable to make bags if you're out questing and gaining levels. My suggestion is get your first 5 levels before you even do a quest, or maybe even more. Hunt humanoids. There's the foragers. They drop equipment. They drop little pouches that you can use as bags until you upgrade. Skeletons, another thing that you should go after. You'll find out even as you go further in the game, storage is a huge problem.
It's your greatest enemy. It is the greatest enemy you will ever encounter in any game, basically, is inventory management. That is the true enemy of these games.
Right. Especially if you're Balinor, who collects everything he ever picked up. And, he's got 400, he's got to make characters just for boar blood, which, by the way, boar blood is very, very valuable. You can make a lot of cash as a low level by killing boars, obviously.
Yeah.
And tell them what the boar blood is used for.
All kinds of stuff. The later potions, some of the later really good foods. I believe it's the stalker steaks, and is it the kamcha?
I think the kamcha too.
It's not used in stalker steaks. That's mountain lion meat, but that's also something you can get in the area. Right. The blood is for the kamcha, which is a consumable 30-minute 2% attack speed haste.
Yep.
I think it even influences casting speed too.
It does. And boar blood also makes healing potions as well. Very important component.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
Higher levels will pay.
Yeah.
To get those things, because they're busy leveling. They don't want to farm the low level stuff. So you accumulate those low level mats and then sell to them.
I would definitely farm that.
Back to what Eddie mentioned, bags, very important. And they're made by leather workers and tailors using the skins from skinned animals. So when you kill these boars, when you kill these wolves and collect their blood, skin the animal too. And you can turn those pelts right into bags for yourself.
Yes. And I think the first quest, the quest you should do is to obtain all the items you need to mine, to skin, to harvest, to chop. That's the first quest you do. That what's that guy's name? He's right in front of the wall.
Aldrius. We actually have a short on him.
We do?
We do.
Oh, the shirtless man, as my wife calls him, the shirtless man.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the quest you should do to get your harvesting tools.
Yeah.
Then you'll be able to harvest. And maybe you'll save up some more money to buy better harvesting tools down the line, because there are quests to improve your harvesting tools, but the thing is, it's taking time away from you experiencing. So maybe it depends. It depends. When we started on a fresh server, there was no level 30 guy making.
No, exactly.
Right. So I think that is a very important way to go. Bag certainly first, and then you've got there's landmarks in the game, which wasn't always the case. I mean, the Crossroads was not really called the Crossroads. We kind of was known as the Crossroads, but then they did something different. Mm-hmm. There's a little text grab or a text thing up when you cross the Crossroads. So now you know where the Crossroads. And I think in the beginning, Crossroads is a big waypoint for where you want to be. Once you leave Avelia, things progressively get harder and harder. So
I want to circle back though as to what you said, Lynx, in the beginning, that you wouldn't do any quests. And I disagree, because money is so hard to get in the game, especially for a new player. And when you can do these easy beginning quests and get yourself a few starting silver, you're able to buy your class spells right away. And they give you cool little bits of lore and questions to ask about what's happening here. And you get some insider information
Well, you helped me change my mind.
He just changed his mind.
That's
No,
all it took.
Yeah, I mean, it is true. Cash-wise, those quests will help you.
Yeah.
It depends on what you'd rather do. I mean, I'm a power gamer, so I want to get those levels, and I figure I'll get the money somehow, by just killing what I kill. But you're right.
For a brand new player, at least.
Right, exactly. And plus, you want to get a feel for the game, and you want to get a feel for the lore of the game and what this atmosphere is like. Like Avalia, if you'll get a ping in Avalia, a perception ping about how the atmosphere is around, and it's a really bawdy, raucous town that there's like bar fights or whatever. Okay, this town is a little crazy, and it adds to the game. Now you have you'll have a hint on what things are like in this town, and then you go to different places and you get different pings and stuff like that, and find out what the atmosphere is there.
It's crazy enough to have somebody hanging out at the bottom of the well.
Yeah, isn't that odd?
Really?
Gives you a little quest to go kill rats, I believe.
Oh wow! And there isn't a cat quest in there. One of the cats or dog.
Yeah, I think there's a dog.
Vera actually did this where you had to get the cat a dog a bone or something. I don't know. Grim the dog. GHRIM.
See, I missed out.
Right next to the end. See, you should have been questing.
Yeah.
So that's one of the hints. Let me ask you. Like Lynx says he's going to make a warrior. What stat? Because you get 2 points to allocate to your level 1 warrior in the character creation screen. What are you going for? I know there've been changes, but really, what do you guys think if you're making a warrior?
Charisma. You may as well be a paladin.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you want to get a lot of people around you. You're a charismatic guy. I don't know.
I think strength and stamina is probably always a solid choice for those two. Stamina gives you more hit points, and your job as a warrior is to take damage. So, I mean, and Constitution is good for hit. Dex, I mean, there is a constant evolution with warriors, and I don't play one currently, and I actually don't have any higher level warrior friends right now. So I couldn't really make a recommendation on that specific class for what you should allocate to, because I just don't know enough about it.
I think you go with the old standbys. And in order to save the money to get these abilities and stuff that as you progress, they have trainers, and they have what's the other one? The ability. There's a trainer, and then it's like every 5 levels.
Yeah, your
traits and scrolls.
Traits. That's the word I was looking for.
Get one free attribute every 5 levels, but unfortunately, you don't get to pick the one they give you. You're just assigned one. It's a permanent stat.
Yeah.
And then sometimes these wacky abilities come up that you didn't even buy, or
why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, like sometimes I'll be playing and it'll be like, you have discovered a new ability, fractal arrow or whatever it is, and you're like, I didn't sign up for this, but hey, it's like a bonus spell. It's like a bonus maneuver.
Those are linked to your weapon skills.
How does that happen?
I was just sorry to interrupt you, but those are linked to your weapon skills. Depending on your primary weapon, as you progressively use it, you get more and more skills with it.
Wow, does it matter what type of weapon I'm using? Like, say I'm using a blade and then I switch to a spear.
I think in some scenarios it's linked to the weapon specifically, the type. But I think in some scenarios it's just your overall weapon proficiency.
Okay.
Once you hit a certain peak.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. I'm glad now I know.
And they've been adding new ones.
Further, if you get higher level techniques and you're, say, level 20 and you've been using blunt weapons the entire course of the career, and you suddenly switch to slashing weapons, your techniques will not work because you don't have a high enough slashing skill.
You're not
your primary weapon has to be high enough skill for the technique to work.
I think it even says you must have, if you cursor over it, it says you must have skill level of 32, say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Abilities are influenced by the weapon types too. They might have a different result based on, like most of the techniques. If it says it has 3 options, if you're using a blunt weapon, it'll have this effect. But if you're using a slashing weapon when you use this technique, it'll have this effect. If you have a piercing weapon, you'll have this effect. There's some passives. Rogue, for example, you know about the ambidextrous. Depending on the weapon types you have equipped, will influence the results. So it makes it interesting. You can build a style, you can have a theme, you can have a preference, and you can work around that.
Yep. Monks and rogues have a big weapon changing system for different debuffs depending on what you've got. It's really cool and intricate. We could talk about that in a whole episode, honestly, about how useful that can be.
I'm taking note.
Go ahead.
He's
So I'm
taking
gonna
notes.
take notes.
Gonna make
future
sure we
episodes.
have future episodes. He's writing it down. This guy's on the ball.
And we'd like to do a special shout out this episode from Thorum. I am Thorum from Petrichor. Appreciate people staying loyal to this game in the spirit of Brad. Thank you, Thorum, for your support. And if anybody else wants to continue supporting us, we are available on Patreon. Link should be below. Always take a look.
Just
And
come
we'd
and
also
hang
like
out.
to do one more special shout out to a guild member of ours, Hamburglar. We'd like to congratulate him on his wedding in the near future. Congrats, buddy.
Robble.
Robble,
Robble.
Robble.
To him and his future wife. Congratulations, guys.
Congratulations to the pair of you.
Yes.
And as always, thank you very much for watching. VR, thank you very much for a great game, and we'll see you next time. Stay tuned
Take
for our
care.
special guest.
And the following is a paid advertisement by Dazak Imperials.
This is Bellador from Dizak Imperials. Come join us today on Vale of Azeris.